Welcome to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, I'm going to be talking about the episode from Season 5, The Vigil. If you're enjoying these, please do like and subscribe, and if you'd like to know when I'm going to post, hit that notification bell. The Vigil was written by Kathleen Hite and directed by Harry Harris, who probably directed more episodes of The Waltons than any other director that we worked with. In this opening shot here early on where you see John Boy in the window and we pull back and pull across and see the house, that was shot outside on the back lot, and that would have used a big crane shot so that they could get that kind of height, elevation, and movement. Drones weren't in existence yet, so we had to work with things like ladders and cranes and whatnot in order to get these big, tall, moving shots. I had mentioned once before that Harry Harris seemed to get all of the episodes involving the chickens, and there was an ongoing thing with Harry about what are we going to do about those chickens? In this case, you see Grandma there in the pen feeding the chickens before she has a moment of abdominal pain, and Jim Bob comes over to see if she's okay. So this would have been another time when Sound would have been dealing with the clucking chickens and Harry would have been dealing with whatever those chickens were doing that he didn't want them doing. Here you notice that John Boy Richard Thomas is using a cane. He talks about it having been from a motorcycle. I'm not sure that we ever saw him ride a motorcycle on the show, but in fact, it was from an injury that Richard had in real life, and so they just added in this little explanation for why he was using a cane. Early on in the episode, John Boy goes to talk with Doc Vance, played by Victor Isay. Victor was with us for a number of seasons as Dr. Vance, and I had quite a lot of work that I got to do with him, and he was just a wonderful actor, and I just always loved working with him. I was sorry when they wrote his character out, but that led for the opening of Tom Bauer coming in as Kurt Willard, who, of course, I ultimately married on the show. Dr. Vance's wife was played by actress Dee Carroll. Now, Dee Carroll and I, this was not the first time we worked together. When I was young, one of the first things I did was in the movie Hotel, and Dee Carroll played my mom. So a little bit of revisiting with a former mom. As Erin runs around trying to find Sheriff Bridges, this area where she is on the back lot of Warner Brothers in what we called Western Street. You would have seen this particular section in a number of episodes, including The Wager, where Mary Ellen and Erin both start and finish that horse race, and also in The Motorcycle. It sometimes also was utilized when someone went to Rockfish or various different things like that. I believe the recruiting office when Jim Bob tries to join the Air Force, and I believe it was also used in the carnival when late at night when we sneak the carnival performers onto the train, that it was probably this very same corner. So a much utilized section of the back lot of the studio. The character of Fanny Tatum appeared in earlier episodes, but at this point she is played by actress Sheila Allen, who is actually the wife of famed producer Irwin Allen of the big, blockbuster action films like Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno and some of those big films. So it was very exciting to have Sheila Allen as a guest. And evidently Irwin Allen actually came and visited her on set at some point. I didn't get to meet him. Really a disappointment. I spoke recently about the clothes on the Waltons and the hats. And here's a wonderful example of Miss Fanny Tatum wearing a rather bold dress print and then a fascinating hat. This is not a hat I would have pictured Miss Fanny wearing. It seems a little whimsical and frivolous for Miss Fanny, who was usually very stern and very professional about her job as a telephone operator. But here you see another side of her as envisioned by the costume department. When we have to take Grandma to the hospital, this entrance to the Virginia hospital, you might recall seeing also as the entrance to Boatwright University, another case of repurposing a building on Midwest Street on the Warner Brothers lot. In Ike Godsey's store, Reckless has joined the family as they wait for news about Grandma. You see that as Elizabeth Cami is petting this dog, that the dog is very much focused forward. When we worked with animals, particularly dogs, the dog knew where that trainer was, and the trainer would move around based on where he could be and where he could give signals to the dog. So the dog is obviously being given signals by the trainer and is focused to see whether there's going to be another signal coming. In this case, clearly the trainer is telling the dog to just stay there and relax. This episode's main story is the misdiagnosis by Mary Ellen of Grandma's illness. She thinks it's intestinal flu because Dr. David Spencer, her upcoming flame and future fiance, has described to Mary Ellen the symptoms of intestinal flu, which is having a bit of a rise in numbers of cases in this particular episode. So she misdiagnoses Grandma, who is experiencing similar symptoms, as having intestinal flu, and this leads to a much more severe situation when Grandma, who actually has appendicitis, has her appendix burst and must be rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. So there's a lot of intensity about this subplot when, my character just is so devastated by realizing that I have made this horrible mistake and that my grandma's life is in serious danger. Unfortunately, most of us don't have those moments in our lives where we potentially feel responsible like that. But Mary Ellen does own up to it and doesn't try to brush it off or anything like that, which I thought was really, really nice. I had a wonderful scene with Geer in the chapel when we go to pray for Grandma, and where I ask forgiveness of both Grandpa and God. And then a little later when I talk with Grandma, finally face going in to talk to Grandma, and to my surprise, she asks my forgiveness for having put that responsibility on me and expecting me as just a nurse to be able to know what is going on with her. So just a beautiful scene, and working with Ellen on a moment like this was very special to me. I also really love the scene between John Boy and John when they talk about life and are reflecting about intense moments like that in our lives. And it struck me as I was watching it because many of us have had those moments in this past year as we deal with the pandemic that we've all been facing and the way that it has impacted our personal lives and our families. And I think most of us have known people who have lost their lives to this horrible pandemic. So it just shows that cycle of life and that these situations do come up in most of our lifetimes, and what do we do with them? So a beautiful moment on the Waltons. So that's what I have for you on this latest segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, the episode The Vigil. I hope you'll join me again for more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. In the meantime, thanks for watching.